UPSC expects out of an essay. And we'll see some examples of some essays I've written in the past on my own or at a coaching center. So that will give you a sense of what I'm saying. And later on, we'll take some questions. The questions could be related to how, when, what, etc. And I'll also share some links which you can take note of later on, which will be in the presentation, which might be shared with you guys later on. Okay, so let me just share the screen. I'll have to log out and log in, sir, because some preferences had to be changed in my computer. Okay, no, I think it should work. Any chance you can see this, sir?
You can try making it into a presentation mode, full screen.
This is visible, right?
This is visible, right?
Okay, sir. Right. So this is what we're looking at going into essay. First of all, let us talk about some myths which there are with the essay. That you need very good English to be good in writing essay. You need a background in literature. You need to be writing essays since you are 3 years old and all of that. Secondly, there is a myth around optionals that if you have certain optionals which overlap with GS, then you have a better chance of writing a good essay. I personally had business management or management as my optional, and it had zero linkage with writing essays. Thirdly, it would be that you need to follow a set pattern. You know, there are many things going around in the market in Rajendra Nagar, etc., that follow the pestle format or the Speckly format or GS1, GS2, GS3 format and all of that. I don't think there is a set format to an essay. An essay is a standalone prompt that is given to you. You know, the statement that UPSC gives you, and depending on the statement, one has to take a call what approach you want to take with the essay. It could be a completely new approach also on the day of the exam if you feel that is required. Then opening with a bang. You know, there is a lot of stress on introduction, starting with a quote, starting with poetry, starting with anecdotes. Anecdotes are in the vogue in the current scenario. I don't think you should again constrain yourself. It should be an open-minded approach to the topic. You should do justice to the topic and not justice to a single approach or a particular way of writing. And something very important is you should not write everything you know. So if there is an essay on, let's say, relevance of NAM, which was one of the topics which came in the past years, you can't start writing everything you know about the non-aligned movement. It should be specific to the relevance of NAM. So your topic has to be very, very clear in your head, and your essay should be weaved around the topic's requirement, not what you know about that specific subject mentioned in the topic. And lastly, I think this, because between prelims and mains, there is generally 3 months of a period of time, and we have to do optional GS, essay, and other things too. And we have this dekh lenge, or, you know, we'll see what happens to essay kind of an approach, or you'll write a couple of essays and get done with it. I think essay is a very intensive thing. If done properly, can reward you very heavily later on. The image on the right is the amount of essays I've written in the last 2 years only. The rest I had thrown out. It is around, I think, 50 odd essays. Yeah, so that is the amount of intensivity that might be required. Let's move on. Some basics we could talk about and then get into the core area of essay writing. Why should we focus on the essay? Right? There are multiple factors one needs to keep in mind. Every paper in the mains examination, all the 7 marked papers are 250 marks each, right? And if you look at GS portions, GS, the average marks hover around 100 to 110, whereas in the essay, the marks, the average is around 120, 115, 120 as on this year, and it could stretch up to 140s, 150s, as I saw in my case this year. And it just propelled my rank by, possibly a 200 or 250 ranks. So the disproportionately higher marks that one can achieve in an essay with a very straightforward strategy is something one should focus on and keep in mind, and thus give it equal importance. Also, we have been reading GS for the whole time before prelims and the whole year before you're preparing for prelims and mains. So GS is already prepared to an extent. Essay is something most of us generally pick up after prelims only, and mostly after the prelims result has come. So there's a very short time, but with that amount of time, lesser effort than GS, you can actually score more marks, right? So that is the key. One should keep in mind that essay is something that might reward me with a basic amount of effort, and it gets missed most of the time because there is GS mock tests, optional mock tests. You have your English and the other language paper also. So all of these things keep growing in your mind, and essay gets missed. Essay is kept at a back burner that, we'll see, we'll write essay when it comes to it. Don't do that mistake. Take it very seriously, at times more seriously than GS papers, because GS, there is no surety that you'll get good marks. Essay, if you do it well and if you have practiced enough essays, you have a good chance of getting a good score in essay. What the essay requires, carrying on from the first slide, it doesn't require a lot. You already have the GS knowledge. So essay, when we talk about content is already there with you. Your GS knowledge is more than enough to sail you through the essay. How to use the content and how to make essay specific content is something we'll see in the coming slides. An open mind when you're writing the essay. See, essay is about expressing yourself in the format of a prose rather than an answer or bullet points. And that is what UPSC is also going to check, whether you can keep an open mind and write everything that you can relate to the essay in that paper, in that 3 hours of the time they have. So I've written like pop culture, movies, anything that comes to your mind that is relevant can very well be included in the essay. Don't think about that you have to stick to a very set pattern and it's a government exam, so one has to be very formal. No, not at all, right? And lastly, knowing your weapons. Your weapons are the way you present your content, a set of quotes which you might have, some short notes on each broad essay theme, and one of them could be trends which you could analyze from past year on what kinds of essays are being asked, right? So these are your strengths. And for example, somebody might be very good at data and facts, right? So that's your strength. So know that that is your weapon. You can very well sprinkle in the essay from time to time and make the examiner realize that you're a person who has a good set of data and facts with you, right? So keep those things in mind while writing the essay or preparing for the essay. Going forward, let us just go over quickly over the basic format of the essay. It should be an introduction, body, conclusion format. I call it the 181 format. By 181, I mean there should be a 1 to 2 page introduction, which would include an introduction and a linking paragraph to your body. The body would be 6 to 8 pages, more or less, considering 5 to 6 major themes within the body of the essay. And then the last conclusion should have a 1 to 2 pager conclusion, including a pre-conclusion. I'll talk about pre-conclusion more, and then the final page should be a conclusion page. Let us see an example, or I had made a rough format of it. I'll try to see if it is visible. Can you see this?
The slide, right?
No, sir. There is a screenshot kind of a thing. Just a second. I'll just try to.
I think you'll have to exit full screen from this PPT.
One second, sir.
Saw the question paper for
This
right?
is visible, right, sir?
Yes, yes.
Right. So this is what I'm talking about. 100 to 150 words of introduction, a linking paragraph, which would be half of a page on the next page after your introduction about what the reader should expect out of your essay. So putting the context, the first one would be introducing your idea and your theory or your argument about the essay. The body would be around the major chunk, 600-700 odd words. Then a pre-conclusion, which will be bigger than the conclusion. Please keep that in mind. A pre-conclusion is basically weaving all the ideas you had, uh, bringing it to a closure, and then the conclusion should be something that is 2 to 3 statements. Finally, giving a one-liner on what you want to say, and giving a hopeful way ahead. That should be very, very small. So we'll also come to examples of this. Let us just go back to, and this is added in the slides which I'll be sharing, so you can refer to it afterwards also. Let us get back to the slide. Yeah. So 110 to 120 words per page. That was my assessment of how long I should, how big I write, what is my font size, and how many words I can fit in a page. You should assess how much do you write in a singular page, and how many pages would you write to reach 100 and an 1100 or a 1200 words word limit that the UPSC gives. Right. So write down a couple of essays and see how many words you're fitting into a page, which is legible and not very a lot of things in put in a small space. Right. Choosing the topics, I would say look at both the topics or both the sections A and B. Some people say that, choose a topic from section A and then go on to B. A mistake that could happen there is you might end up picking two topics which are very close and then end up repeating stuff from your first essay in your essay number 2. So rather have a broad sense of what you're looking at the section B, so that you don't overlap topics or very similar or close topics where your content might overlap. It might seem repetitive to the examiner, so don't do that. Just look at section B, choose your section A, and when you come to section B, also give a couple of minutes to choose between 2 topics or 3 topics you might not be sure of. But do look at all the 8 topics before you delve into writing them or choosing a topic. Lastly, 20 to 25 minutes of brainstorming. Some people say 15 to 20 minutes. That's up to your wisdom and how fast you can brainstorm. I used to take 20 to 25 minutes to brainstorm. So it is 5 minutes of choosing a topic, 20 odd minutes to brainstorm on the topic, and then 1 hour to write it. That would effectively mean 5 minutes per page of writing. That is very slow as compared to GS, where it is around 3 odd minutes per page. So you have enough time to write even within that 1 hour. Please keep that in mind. We'll see an example of brainstorming if it is visible. I'll just try to zoom into this. This is, sorry. Yeah. Yeah, so this is the brainstorming page. So I use generally 2 pages to brainstorm. This whole of this takes around 20 odd minutes. I'm not sure if it is very clear, but just look at the overall picture that you're seeing out of this. Also, so every word in, if this is visible, every word in the topic I have underlined and tried to break down the topic into what all I would like to address and what all the topic or the demand of the topic is. Right. So let us look at the topic, tackling climate change. Are we on the right path? Right. So why do we need to do the tackling? Right. That is the first question that comes to your mind. Then what is climate change? You will need to define what climate change in your sense is there. Then what is it? What are the issues created by it, if this is visible? Then are we on the right path? That is the core of your essay. That is the question mark or the question they are asking. So are we? So it's a open-ended question. You can do a yes or no. It could be 50-50%. It could be a 65% yes, 35% no. That's up to you to choose. And then you go on to, if we are on the right path, then what more can be done? If we are not on the right path, then also what more can be done? So that gives you a broad outline of what the essay requires from you, right? Then henceforth you can break it down into all those questions which you are wanting to answer. So I am answering all those questions. If you can see, this is question 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the way forward and ending. At the side, I've made a list of quotes that I have in my mind I would want to put in the essay, and I sprinkle a lot of quotes in my essay. I think it just adds a good flavor. And a quote has a very good property that it encompasses a one paragraph long idea into 2 lines and saves you space and gives a good attention seeking portion also in the essay for the examiner. It's something I would recommend you can use extensively. If you see good essays also, they do quote a lot of authors and some good quotes are put in it. Also, if you can see, there are some small numbers written on side of each of the questions. So these numbers are the amount of pages I'm going to take to finish that portion of the essay. So I already have my page limit set in how many pages I have to finish this portion. This is generally flexible by half a page, but I try to stick to it so that it remains a 10 to 11 page essay. It doesn't exceed a lot. Sometimes what happens, and I have experienced this in the past, that you reach the 8th page and you realize you're halfway through your body and you have to finish the body and the conclusion within 2 to 3 pages. It looks very odd to the examiner, and it gives a sense of abruptness which the examiner might not like. So to have a well-rounded essay, I think have a page limit set for each portion. I'll show you another one. So water crisis, not just metrology, but mismanagement, right? So if you can see, I have again mentioned the page numbers or the number of pages which I'm going to use for each part. This had many questions, I think around 8 to 10 questions. So everything had lesser number of pages. And in the format of brainstorming also, it is what suits you. This is in a very different format than this. But whatever works for you, it should be used. Something you can take a note here is that as soon as I finish a topic I have written in the actual essay, I tick it off so that I don't miss a topic or I don't repeat a topic, right? So you can keep ticking off from your brainstorming part. So you always go back to the last page, see what you have to write, come back, write that portion, again go back, see what again you have to write, come back. That is the exercise that keeps happening throughout the essay, right? Let's get back. Okay, now coming to what the UPSC expects, right? This is the screenshot you can see on the slide is basically what UPSC writes in the notification that comes out before prelims. There are 5 things one has to keep in mind, or what UPSC expects: keeping close to the subject, arranging in an orderly fashion, writing concisely, effective and exact expression, right? This is what they have given. It seems a bit ambiguous, but I'll come to what each of these mean to me and how I have implemented them. It might mean very different things to all other people, but I'll give you my interpretation. I'll add a 6th thing to this, is about the examiner. The examiner is reading essays day in, day out. You have to be very careful when you write an essay so that you are presenting your story to a person who is checking multiple essays in a day. You have to make sure that you wake them up from their slumber and give them a jolt of fresh air or a breath of fresh air. So for them to take attention, oh, this is something I have not seen. This introduction is something that wants me or makes me want to read the essay. This child or the student has written in a way that I have not seen in the previous copies. Let me look at it more keenly. And there itself, you put an anchor into the examiner's mind that, I want to read it and there is some feel good to it. And I would want to give this person more marks than average. Right. So there itself, you set the standard for your marking. Let's go forward. So the first thing from the notification or the prompt that UPSC gives is keeping close to the subject, right? Now, what does this mean? Keeping close is basically remembering what you're writing about. At times, as I said previously, you're writing about non-aligned movement, and you might drift away in your GS knowledge and start writing about something which is not connected to the essay. It is talking about relevance of NAM. You're talking about how NAM started, who all were there while starting the NAM, etc., etc. So it is a very good idea to keep revisiting the prompt or the topic of the essay after you finish every part of your essay, which we talked about in brainstorming. That after you finish a portion, go and revisit whether you are aligning with the topic or not. It's also called signposting. So you always refer back to what the essay topic is very explicitly. Relevance of NAM, if that is the word we are using, it should come multiple times in your essay so that the examiner has a feeling that you know what you're writing about. Even though you might have gone astray somewhere in the middle, the concluding statements of a few paragraphs should mention that topic name. I'll show you an example of signposting from one of the essays I had written. Right. So this is the essay prompt says, what does it mean to be a global citizen? Right. That is the essay prompt. So global citizen is the keyword I picked up on. We'll come to the body of the essay, but let's see. This is the introduction. There is the word global citizen mentioned here. A global citizen mentioned immediately after that. If we keep reading global citizens, right, leading to global citizens may have changed. So every time you keep signposting, making sure that the examiner remembers that you do know what you're writing about, and that prompt, the theme of the essay is repeated multiple times, and you link it back to your original theme so that you are also conscious of what you are doing, and the examiner is also conscious of what you want to say. Now, be persuasive in your argument, right? You have to make the examiner believe in the story you are writing. Let us say that if we see this prompt, the prompt says, what does it mean to be a global citizen, right? So at the end of the essay, you should be able to convince the examiner, or at least bring them to your side, thinking that your definition of a global citizen is something that they can relate to and they approve of to an extent, right? So that is what persuasion means. You have to write in a way with arguments, with examples, with anecdotes, with quotes, with GS knowledge, to persuade the examiner to think that yes, this person has convinced me that his interpretation of what it means to be a global citizen is something I would be okay to agree on, right? If not completely agreeing on. So yeah, so the last point is reaffirming or recalling the topic after every argument, which we saw in the previous the essay I was showing. So I hope this thing is clear. If there is a question on this, we can come back to this later and we can talk more on this. The second thing is, the second and the third actually, is arranging in an orderly fashion and writing concisely. Now, orderly fashion, we already have set an order when we say it's an introduction, body, conclusion, and introduction, linking paragraph, body, pre-conclusion, and conclusion format. So that itself is an order. Now, within the body also, we should look at some form of order so that the examiner knows that, oh, this person is writing in such and such format, that he or she takes an idea, writes 2 paragraphs about it, then moves on to the next idea, then the next, then the next. And broadly, there are 5 to 6 ideas in the body. So that is what I've written about. You might have 10 to 12 ideas that come to you while you brainstorm. So for example, if you're talking about the Spectly or the pestle format, political, economic, social, technological, etc., you might end up with 10 to 12 themes you might want to include in the body, but pick and choose 5 to 6, at max 7 or 8 themes which you want to write about. Don't try to fit in 10 to 12 themes inside the body. There is very less space and you will not be able to complete the argument properly. And it would look like dropping 10 points without any linkage, without any story. And it would start looking like a GS paper, which we don't want to do in the essay. Your GS knowledge is there, use it to substantiate arguments. Don't fill the essay with GS knowledge. So every idea should be 1 to 2 paragraphs. So if I'm talking about, let's say, how an Indian IT engineer is a global citizen because they work on offshore projects in the USA, I'll introduce what the IT BPO industry in India is. I'll give some data about it. Then I would go on to say what companies are working in that field, how it is causing brain drain or not causing brain drain. And finally, coming to how they are global citizens because they work from India, they work from a remote location. At times, they also go and work in the US, but overall, they stay in a form of a global village, and thus they can be called a global citizen, right? So hence, you go back and link to your major argument that what it means to be a global citizen. So an IT engineer can be a global citizen because of these things. That is finished in 2 paragraphs. Every paragraph, 3 to 4 lines, every line, 5 to 6 words. Don't make very long statements or sentences because it may get convoluted and the examiner may lose interest and understanding of what you're trying to say. So try to keep it very short and 2 to 3 paragraphs per page. So a page should not have one paragraph that is, that takes up three-fourths of the page. And then it starts looking boring for the examiner to read into it. So if you have short paragraphs, which are like, let's say 1/3 of the page at max, it seems orderly, it seems concise, and it seems readable and aesthetic at the same time. We'll take an example of this. And after every idea, link to the next idea you are going into. So I'll tell you about how the paragraph structuring is done and then the linking in some examples. All right. So let us look at this essay. The topic is, are we entering an era of deglobalization, right? So just look at the structuring. The introduction might be a bit long, but on the rest of the pages, it is like three paragraphs per page, generally, right? If this is visible and you can make sense of it, it's 3 paragraphs, 3 to 4 lines per essay. Just look at the formatting. Don't look at how or what the content is. Now on this page, if you can see, the examiner has written a comment only because it seems very big. So they are telling me not to go into details. I might not have gone into details, but it looks like that. So try to keep it very small, 2 to 3 paragraphs per page. Try to maintain that kind of a symmetry, right? And linking to the next idea. So when I mean linking, it has to be like this, right? Let's say you're talking about Swachh Bharat scheme, okay? And that is the question. And you are talking about its prospects, issues, and challenges in the essay. So your prospects would include some 2 to 3 themes, then the issues would include some 2 to 3 things or 4 to 5 paragraphs, and then the challenges also. So the linking statement has to come when you move into a new theme in the essay, not within that theme, right? So if you're talking about socio-economic, political within prospects of Swachh Bharat scheme, no need to link them together. But when you move from prospects into issues, right? So you have talked about what Swachh Bharat scheme can do. Then you put a linking statement at the end that having looked at all the prospects and all the ideas that there are there in the Swachh Bharat scheme, let us also look at the issues that we are going to face in it. Right? So this is the kind of a linkage that will give the sense to the examiner, okay, he or she has finished one portion and moving on to the next. So there is an order. Again, this is where we talk about being in an orderly fashion while writing the essay. So that's what UPSC means, right? Or at least that's what I've interpreted what UPSC means. So let's keep this in mind and try doing this very consciously. It will become a habit after you write 3 to 4 essays, right? So you'll automatically start linking. So closing an argument, linking to the next, making that argument in 2 to 3 pages, closing it again, linking it to the next. It becomes a habit. It looks very orderly and very aesthetic, and there is a flow to the essay. So this is what flow to the essay means for me, right? Connecting things as you go on forward to 8 to 10 pages. And yeah, lastly, your analysis and has to be very balanced. It can't be one-sided. The question might give you a one-sided statement that are we entering, so as we saw, are we entering a era of global citizen? So it could be a yes, it could be a no. The yes could be more, the no could be less, or the other way around, but it cannot be all yeses and zero nos. You can't say that no, we are not entering an era of global citizenry because I think so. No, that is not the truth. There will always be people who think that, we are in the era of being global citizens. So you cannot be very extreme in interpretation of the topic. You have to give the other side of, or the other angle to the topic or the theme you're writing on. And there has to be optimism, right? So I would put it in an orderly fashion theme or the prompt, because optimism has to be reflected across your essay. You are a person applying for a job for the civil services. You need to be optimistic about anything that is being asked to you. Is NAM relevant? Yes, it might be relevant in the future. Are we entering into global citizenry? Yes, we might be entering into it. We might not, but we should look forward to entering into it. So that kind of optimism underlying should be there in your essay, and it seems orderly. If you're a person who seems morose, who seems hell-bent on saying that no, NAM has lost its relevance, it's no longer useful to us, anything that exists cannot be fruitless. It will be of some use. One has to find uses as a civil servant of resources you have at hand. You only have 10,000 rupees to spend, but you need to do social welfare. You have to find ways to do it. So that optimism needs to be underlying throughout your essay, right? I hope I'm making some sense here, but if not, we can clarify this later on. Then effective expression. Right now, what do you mean by effectiveness? There is, you should be clear, right? You have to be unique also. Unique in the sense, the approach should seem very organic, right? It should seem that you're writing from the heart. I would want to show you an example of what I mean by unique here. Let us look at one of the essays, maybe this one only. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so the prompt, if it is visible, digital infrastructure is key for future ready governance. Right now, I was writing this sometime in November, December last year when the COVID situation was at its peak. So digital infrastructure is key for future ready governance. We all were in the midst of a pandemic. I started writing about a pandemic, I think, in this. Right. So I would like to read a bit from this. The starting is rewind to January 2020. Now imagine drones delivering remdesivir and HCQ stocks to hospitals listed on the central database on schedule as per number of patients. A self-running train centrally controlled by AI algorithm that carries vaccines cooled at minus 80 Fahrenheit, maintained by a bot. COVID patients being tested for RT-PCR via nurse bots with zero human contact. A distributed blockchain ledger that stores patient data nationally, nanobots carrying targeted plasma to lungs, blood to infected patients, a quick 3-day discharge with insurance claimed, processed online, migrant labor being tracked via online migrant database, routes being planned for movement of buses using GPS and satellites. So this is something that I immediately felt that I should write like, and all of this comes from me coming from a computer science background. So I understand these things very organically. I started the essay like that. It is a very imaginary kind of an introduction, that imagine a scenario, this is happening, right? So it links to the topic immediately, saying that digital infrastructure is key for future ready governance. So in the future, if more pandemics are there, as the pandemic we are seeing right now, if we had this kind of digital infrastructure, what kind of a response would it be? So that is the picture I'm giving in my introduction. This essay will be shared with all of you. You can read through it later on. So that is what I mean when I say that you have to be unique in your approach, in effective expression. You'll be effective when you're writing from the heart, when you're writing from your own original ideas rather than copying somebody else's idea. Try doing this. There might be chances where you can actually express very freely in the essay and it might reward you very heavily. So yeah, keep this in mind. Persuasion, right? Persuading, as we talked about, making sure that the examiner is on your side while reading your argument. He or she is not on the other side of your argument and saying, no, this student has written something which I completely can't agree to. That shouldn't be the view that the examiner should have. Persuasion should have a cause effect relationship when you're writing your body. So what I mean by cause effect, let me just take an example of this. Okay, so the topic is navigating the economic slowdown in India. Navigating the current economic slowdown. It was also in the context of pandemic last year. Let us take, let us take this. This is the body starting. So India technically entered recession for the first time since independence with 2 successive quarters of negative GDP growth, right? So I am persuading the person about economic slowdown with data here, right? So there's a cause and effect. Q2 of 2020 ended with some GDP growth, and then FY 2021 seems to have a growth of negatives, this as per RBI. Before COVID-19 also, the GDP growth rate was on a declining trend with 4.7% of growth. So what I'm saying is currently we are seeing trends. The cause is these trends is because of the pandemic, but the cause is also before the pandemic, where external and internal factors were causing a slowdown in the GDP growth, and hence it means that we are entering, or in India is facing an economic slowdown. So the persuasion is done by data, facts supporting your argument. Yes, we are entering an economic slowdown and we have to handle it. Then analytical, right? So analytical means there has to be a connectivity in each paragraph that you're talking about. I call it this, hence this approach. So, for example, we saw the essay on digital infrastructure requirement in the current era. Let us say we are talking about why digital infrastructure, right? So we are entering a stage of global connectivity. Hence, we need something that connects people across the country, across villages, across nationalities. Hence, there is a need to push digital infrastructure and put money into it, because digital infrastructure is costly. Thus, we need more money. Since money cannot only be given by government, hence we need the participation of private sector also. If all of us participate, then as a result of it, digital infrastructure will get a push. So it has a this, then this happens. Because of it, this happens, does this, right? So that is a complete argument. That is what I talk about being analytical within the body. So every paragraph or every theme which we talked about, let us say you're talking about the social aspect of something. So the social aspect should cover one theme in completeness. Let's say you're talking about hunger in an essay. So you have to make an argument that India has very high population. There is a lot of pilferage and wastage in the food distribution chain. Thus, there is food inequality, and add to it a lot of poverty and the unseen poverty in our country. leads, and adding to it poor sanitation, hygiene, and swachhata. Thus, it leads to malnutrition also. All of these add up to the hunger problem we are facing in the country. So it's a logical, analytical argument. You are not just saying from your mind and your heart. आप मन से नहीं बोल रहे हैं कि oh there is hunger in the country. You are giving facts, doing an analysis of those facts, and then coming to the conclusion which you are presenting in your argument, right? Lastly, your expression has to be apt and relevant. Now, apt and relevant in the sense, let's say the topic is about India-US defense relations, and if you start with how India has helped in UN and UN peacekeeping, then you come on to India-US nuclear deal, and then you come on to 2+2 dialogue, and then LEMOA, BECA, and all those agreements we have signed. The point is the first two are not very relevant. They are not contemporary. They can be mentioned in passing. But if today there is a question on India-US defense relations, the majority of the thrust has to be on Quad, on 2+2, on all the defense agreements we have made, the STA1 status, etc., etc. Right? Those are the things you will focus on, not the erstwhile 30, 40 years ago or 60 years ago of information, which might not interest the examiner. Right? So keep the topic relevant and contemporary. So that would be effective, right? Effective in the sense it will fetch you marks. And lastly, exact expression, right? This is the last thing that the UPSC notification talks about. Very simple lines, as we talked about, very short lines. Let us take an example, if we can, about a short line, let's say. I hope it's there in this. Yeah. So I hope this is visible. The digital governance essay, this has been picked from that. So let us read. Digital governance is crucial in political ecosystem. One short line. It ensures access, affordability, transparency, and information parity. Another short line. Budget reforms and e-taxation, etc., etc. This is a slightly longer line. And then you come into the ending line is also this enables participative governance, right? So that's also a very short 5 to 6 word sentence. This is like 4 to 5 sentences in one paragraph, and each sentence is very small so that your idea is crisp and clear. It doesn't get convoluted. If you read the middle line, it is a bit longish, and hence you might have to read it twice when you're reading multiple essays to understand what it is saying, and that might irritate or irk the examiner a bit. So try to keep it as short as possible. Right? Suitability to the topic. You have to be exact in the sense, let's say you're talking about digital infrastructure and you start talking about Swachh Bharat and how cleanliness is happening and how a campaign is taken up by people, and there is no mention of social media, the Swachhata app, or the digital infrastructure that has been put in place. It will not suit the topic. You might be thinking about it, but it might not be suitable to put in that topic. Rather put something like Manrega or PDS, where digital infrastructure has a bigger role to play. The PDS shops, there has to be a good digital infrastructure for them to be working efficiently. So that will be relevant and suitable to the topic, rather than some scheme which you might know very well, but might not relate to the topic. That will not be exact. That will be ambivalent. That will be encircling the topic, but not hitting the bullseye. And no redundancy. Don't explain what you write. I was doing this in the past and I realized it takes up space, it wastes your pages, and it lessens your marks, and the examiner will get irritated by you repeating the same thing. For example, say that if I write in the essay that hunger is a very pertinent problem because of the number of people we have in this country. In other words, because we have a large population, handling the food crisis becomes very difficult in this country. These two are the same statements, but I'm taking up almost 3 to 4 lines in writing this and effectively saying the same thing. Write the first statement, rely on the wisdom of the examiner to get what you're saying, and don't explain something which is very basic. If you are reading GS every day and you have good knowledge, you might feel that, I'm writing something very specific that the examiner might not be aware of. It is their problem. It is not your problem. You write what you know in the most concise format. If they don't know it, they will generally have a sense of what you're saying. So you need not explain each and everything. It will just waste your time and be redundant, right? So don't do that. So we have spoken about the prompt. There are a few more things we want to talk about. The main structure of the essay. I would not go into a lot of things into this, but let's just see some examples if we can. The introduction. The introduction has to be a trailer or the catchphrase that brings the examiner into your essay. They have to think that, oh, yes, I want to read this essay. This seems something very interesting. And the student has introduced the concept or the theme which they want to write on in a very nice manner. So let me read forward. That is the feeling one should have. It is the feeling you have when you watch a good trailer. You want to watch the film after you see the trailer. That is the feeling one should have, right? So keep this in mind. It might just make sense to you. So there are many formats of introducing. There are many videos and blogs about how to start intro and all of that. The easiest introduction could be explaining the topic as you understand it, right? So let us see one example if it is possible. Yeah, so tackling climate change, are we on the right path, right? We had seen this topic earlier. I chose to introduce with the dichotomy we see in our lives and not realizing climate change is happening. So I wrote some sort of, if you can call it poetry, or some sort of introductory phrase, which says that sitting in one's own swanky corporate office, lowering the AC temperature to keep the iced tea cold for longer. At the same time, the AC blasts out hot fumes and GHG gases that add to the urban heat and make climate change stronger, right? So it immediately brings you into a scenario where you might actually be sitting in an AC room and reading this essay and realize, oh, I am a part of climate change right here and right now, right? I feel it creates an iota of interest into the reader's mind. And then I went on to introducing the topic. So what climate change is? See, so climate change has been a buzzword for a while. Last few years, reports have said this. It is the most searched words on Google. Even during the lockdown, the reversal of some short-term pollution happened, etc., etc. So I bring in some context on what is currently happening. Then coming into some data that last 4 years have been hottest years in the last century. Some IPCC reports mentioned, etc., etc. And then I mention what I mean by climate change also here, that thus climate change is not just global warming or sea level rise. It is a Pandora's box that if opened, we cannot know what to expect. So what I mean to say is explaining the topic as you understand it. I understood it as a dichotomy sitting in an AC room and I wrote about it. So you need not have a very big bang introduction per se with an anecdote or a story or something like that. You can have a very basic introduction. Secondly, something I used in both my essays this year in the UPSC exam were anecdotes. It could be historical, it could be imaginary, it could be a paradox, it could be a conversation. Let me give a verbal example of each one of them. I have screenshots, but it will be too long to get into it. Anecdotal history. So there was a topic this year called Simplicity is the Ultimate Sophistication. And that was sort of a philosophical essay or an abstract essay, as we call it. I started by Gandhiji arriving for the roundtable conference wearing only a dhoti in biting cold winter in England. And when he did that, the whole of England was looking at this man intriguingly and thinking that, this person is so sophisticated in the simplest of manners, wearing only a dhoti. Who is this man? Why is he here? What is India? Why is India important to us? All of those questions were raised just by the simplicity of this one man. So that was the anecdote I started with. There could be an imaginary anecdote, right? So let's say global citizen, right? So the imaginary anecdote could be that, I woke up today, or let's say Ram wakes up in India, takes a flight at 4 a.m. to the US, does some work there, and then flies down to Brazil, gets some work done there, flies down to England, does this, and comes back to India by the end of the week. That is what I mean by a global citizen who lives in a global village. That's an imaginary story I weaved. A paradox could be two students in a classroom studying the same subject, but one being from a richer family, one being from a poorer family. And when they go back from their classroom, what kinds of realities do they face? One has servants to bring food to them, the other has to go out and search for food, like something like that. So showing the paradox, especially in social issues kind of essays, you can use that. Fourthly could be a conversational anecdote. For example, Gandhiji talking to a kid born in 2000s, right? So that is imaginary as well as conversational. And what would Gandhiji have a conversation with a child who is, let's say, 15 years old and born in the current century, right? So that is a conversation which can start, that will immediately attract the examiner into, oh, this person has brought in something new, right? Quotes is something you can start with, explaining the quote, relating it to your topic. Poetry is something I picked up. I made up some poems on specific themes. I can show you a very quick example of one. Uh, this is a poem which I wrote if there was an essay on space. So this is in the slide. You can take a look at this. Could we ever have imagined walking the moon we only saw afar, sending flying machines in the space that uh, help the soldier, the scientist, the farmer at par, sending a video call across continents in a blink that took months, not long ago, lifting off with the aspirations of a planet up and above is the only way to go. So I had this in mind. If there is a space related essay, I might want to this kind of a poem.
I didn't catch that. Could you try again?
Sorry about that.
It's all good.
Then the body. Body we have talked a lot about. Just look at what I'm saying here. It could be a sectoral approach, the pestle or the speckly approach. If you're not clear on what pestle and speckly is, just put those words into Google, you'll know what I mean. A better way to do is go by GS1, GS2, GS3, GS4. So covering history, geography, social issues, governance, polity, international relations, the whole of GS3, and then the ethical and other parts of it. So that might be a better approach if you're not very clear about what pestle and speckly means. The temporal approach might be useful for some essays. For example, has NAM lost its relevance? You can start with a slight history of NAM, then why was it important then? Why has it lost its relevance in the contemporary times? What can be done in the future? So it is across a period of time. You are evaluating one topic across time. Something could also be that women's importance in the society in current times, let's say that is, or in the contemporary world, maybe that is the topic. So women in the ancient times, the medieval times, the modern times, independence, pre-independence, post-independence, pre-1991, post-1991, contemporary, and the future, right? So that is a timeline you can chart. Social issues, it might be a good idea to go from individual. So how a social issue, let's say hunger, affects individual, affects a family, affects society, affects the nation, and internationally. You can go inside out, individual to international, or you can come outside in also, starting from the international theme, coming down to the individual. We can, if we have more time later on in some other sessions, we can go deep into this. You can talk about what, why, how of the social issue, the impact it has on ground, the efforts that has been done by the civil society and the government and the private sector to reduce that or to help that social issue. What are the lacunae we face in terms of that issue? What more can be done? So that is also an arc you can take in a social issue related essay. A stakeholder approach, which is the third one, could also be used. That how does that social issue, let's say hunger, affects women, children, the backward classes, the PWD, the LGBTQ community, and the elderly, and so on. So vulnerable sections you can pick up and write about how that issue affects them. Again, 5 to 6 ideas. Let 3 to 4 ideas be regular ideas like social, economic, political, etc. Pick up 1 to 2 themes which are unique. So let's say you're talking about hunger. Bring in a theme of sports in India, right? That is something which might be very unique to the examiner. People might not connect hunger and sports very quickly, but you can connect it and go on to link it to the Olympics also, that why can't we produce a lot of athletes, because we are facing a strict nutrition deficit and there is a nutrition crisis in the country also. That might be one of the reasons that we don't see enough sportsmen. Or when you're fighting for hunger, when you're fighting for food, can you think about sports, right? So that's a completely new angle to that theme, which maybe the regular aspirant might not be thinking of. So try to have these a couple of unique themes in the body rather than the regular things. But if not, that is also fine. Conclusion has to have a pre-conclusion. I strongly believe in it. It gives a sense of completion and closure. The pre-conclusion will wrap what all you have spoken in the body. And then the last half a page should be the conclusion. Let us see a very quick example of this. I hope people are not bored by now, but bear with me. Right. So this is, we had seen the global citizen essay prompt. This is the pre-conclusion, right? So if you can see the silver linings, that is where the pre-conclusion starts. There is a quote about from Thomas Edison. Then if we imagine a global democracy, it derives power from we the people. The diaspora is a crucial cog in the world order today. So I'm talking about how all kinds of global citizens would tie down into a big idea of what a global citizen is. Diaspora diplomacy could be done. There is need to reform multilateral institutions. So these are some sprinkle of ideas in the pre-conclusion, what a global citizen can be used for, right? If you have a global citizen who is an Indian native, they can be used to influence politics, economy of other nations and help us in our diplomatic endeavors. So that is something we could talk about. So this, if you can look at it visually, this is where the pre-conclusion starts. It is like 2, 3, 4, 5 odd paragraphs. And then this area is where the conclusion starts. So the global citizen carries the eternal flame of humanity that runs deep within each of us, a positive statement. A confident safeguard and a connected global citizen is the call of the future. It's again giving the idea that you believe in the concept of a global citizen. We must remember that there will be a time to debate universal citizens traveling to Moon and Mars, and it will be the acumen, resolve, and the vision of these global citizens that will ensure a small step for man, a big leap for mankind. So now I'm giving a futuristic perspective that not just a global citizen, we are looking for universal citizens where you'll be traveling to other planets. So it is these global citizens who will take that call. So that is the exact conclusion I'm talking about. It should be futuristic and give you hope. Right. So I think we are done with this part. This is something that I was asked to talk about, that there are two types of essays that now UPSC has started asking. An objective one where it is on a social issue, or let's say NAM, or India-US relations, or patriarchy like last year. So these are very specific objective topics which you have GS knowledge on and you can write on. The other is the philosophical abstract kind of essays. And these are a bit tricky to handle. So what I would recommend doing in these essays is to somehow find a linkage to the knowledge you have, right? So first of all, choose the essay which you understand the best, right? If we take an example of last year's essay topics, just a second. This is, I think, 2019, right? So wisdom finds truth, right? I had no idea what to write in this, how to approach the topic, immediately canceled it off. Values are not what humanity is, but what humanity ought to be. I understood it to an extent, but thought that it might go too philosophical from my end. I did not have a lot of objective things to write in it. I ended up choosing the fourth one, which is courage to accept and dedication to improve are the two keys to success, right? I chose this because I felt I had enough content on it. I have a good understanding of what the topic means. My introduction to this topic was when we failed launching the Mars rover, and all of us were very unhappy at seeing that rover fail. The ISRO chairman came forward, the Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister came forward and accepted the small failure we had, but at the same time showed resolve and dedication to improve on it and launch another mission onto Mars, right? So that is the story that came to my mind, and that is the key to success of ISRO. So that takes away or takes on the whole prompt and addresses the prompt directly. Started with that and then took many such examples to prove that this statement looks right to me. So there would be generally statements that will give a value judgment. So this was a value judgment that, courage to accept and dedicate fields, political, social, economic, historic, geographic, that such instances lead to success. But at the same time, I reserve 20% of my body to say not just these two things, there are many things that are also responsible or are keys to success, which we should also look at. We should not be blindsided that only the courage to accept and dedication will sail you through. Expertise, right? Good people working with you, having a human approach to very objective things. These kind of things are also keys to success, so that you give the other side of the topic also, and you're not just praising the topic through and through. Otherwise, it looks very one-sided, right? So explore dimensions of the topic after you have understood the topic. So let's say there was, I think, a topic last year that ships do not sink because of water around them, but because water gets into them, something like that. So I think it is very clear what the topic says, that, let's say you are in a sea of corrupt people, but if you stay your course, you will not get corrupted. You only get corrupted when you let the corruption seep into you, and you also become a part of that system. So this is one example I came up with. Then explore dimensions of how in other areas, ships that let water in, or somewhere where a small virus can get can cause a big havoc later on. You could start with the story in that essay, with the story of the Titanic, that the biggest ship ever that sailed on this planet, drowned because it hit an iceberg, and then it let water inside it, although it was in the biggest oceans ever, and it could ply the biggest cyclones, etc. But only when water got into it, the Titanic sank. Going forward, you talk about ethics, you talk about war, like the wars are lost when people inside your own army are not willing to fight or have joined hands with the other people. You could talk about the Congress during the independence era, when there were multiple factions that were created within the Congress because there was some rot happening. You could talk about the Mughals, how they declined because of successive rulers who were not very good. It was not something external, no war, but internally they became weak, and that's why their ship sank. You can talk about COVID, a small virus putting the world to a halt. So ships don't sink because of water around them, but because water gets into them. That's the topic. Explore multiple dimensions. Breaking down the words, as we saw in one of the previous essay prompts, break down the topic. Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. If that's the prompt, what simplicity means to you, what sophistication means to you. Is simplicity the ultimate form of sophistication? Yes or no? If it is not, then what other things are the ultimate form of sophistication? If yes, then why it is? And then some additional statements. That is how you break down a statement. Elaborate and explore the topic. Stakeholder approach works very well. So let's say there is an essay of, let's take a example from there. Best for an individual is not necessarily the best for society, right? So you talk about the individual, that is the stakeholder, the society, that is the stakeholder, family is a stakeholder, children are a stakeholder, vulnerable sections are the stakeholders, nation is a stakeholder, international community is a stakeholder. Then you talk about it basis the theme of the essay. That might be a way to break down the essay and write about it. So philosophical essays, you have to take a call how you want to break it down and explore all dimensions. The best part about philosophical essays is they give you enough and ample opportunity to express as freely as you want, right? So as I told last year, that I started with Gandhiji's anecdote on simplicity and the roundtable conference. It just occurred to me that if I have a free landscape, why not run with something which comes to your mind and which seems very which propels you to write very convincingly. So try and do that. Try to have fun with the philosophical part of the essay. Don't be scared of it, but only choose the essay that you're completely clear of, not something which is ambiguous to you as a topic itself. Then you will not be able to handle, or you will miss out parts of the topic which won't look great on paper. Right? Now, some things to think about. We are coming towards the end. Which test series to join? Right? There are many test series. I personally had not joined a test series for my first 3 attempts. But in the last one in 2020, I thought, why not get evaluated? So I joined Vision IS essay test series, found it pretty decent, but there are multiple of them in the market. So the things you should try to put into the evaluation of a test series are, first of all, what kind of evaluation of the tests they do. The timeline, do they give the feedback and the checked copy at the right time? At times, it might take 20-25 days for a copy to get checked. That doesn't solve your purpose. So clarify with the person you're talking to. You're providing them money. Ask them, how many days will it take the test copy to be checked if I submit it on the day it is supposed to be done, right? Then who is checking it? Are there previous aspirants, or do they have some experts, or does the faculty also check the essay? So do inquire about all of these things. Don't go by brand name. And the toppers recommendations on some mock test series which they might have joined. So it might have worked for them. So do listen to them, but with a bowl of salt, not a grain or a pinch of salt, because at times it might just be propaganda. It might not be the actual truth. They might not have even joined the test series. So be very cautious of that. Go do a thorough research and then pick on it. Also, the amount of money you're going to spend on it, if it is very exorbitant, possibly choose somebody else, because there is not a lot of difference. You just need somebody to evaluate you. For me, I joined the test series because I wanted to have that feeling of having that pressure of writing it for somebody else to evaluate it and getting marks. You want to do well. As a child, we all have learned this, that you want to do well when you're getting evaluated in a school also. So maybe that is the thing that propelled me. And also the teacher who is running the essay test series or the essay module for that coaching, do take that into consideration. Do look at their credentials. If it is not available, call the coaching and ask that who is taking it, what are their credentials, what have been the results they have gotten in the past, right? Some other things to think about, trends and topics. There is, I think, Shankar IS also provides a list of topics from the past 5-10 years. So it will give you a sense on the themes you should be preparing on. You should have short notes on big themes, 20 to 25 themes. I'll just show you what I did. Yeah, so this is, if this is visible, this is a one pager on population, right? So quotes which I want to write, thinkers which I want to quote in population, data which I want, and I kept some space to add more data, etc. Areas which I would cover in the body as per the requirement of the body. So national population policy, 2-child policy, 3 types of population policies, TFR, MMR, etc., etc. The positives, the negatives of population, how to control, way forward, and in body, what approaches I can take. I can take a stakeholder approach for population, individual, women, old age, vulnerable, etc. I could take a concentric, the social issue perspective, individual, society, national, international. And light speed is an acronym I made for something. So that is also something you can use. This is a representative list of topics, broad themes, which I prepared short one pagers on, like I showed you above. So these themes, the essay prompts, all 8 of them would generally, at least the objective ones, would revolve around these topics: women, poverty, education, hunger, health, children, political issues, judiciary. So if you look at the trends, you will find out these are the topics most often repeated, right? The broad theme. So if you have a broad set of parameters on what you want to write in a particular theme, you will be better able to handle the actual paper and pick and choose from your short notes what you want to write in that particular essay, given the demand of the essay, right? Sorry. Brainstorming every other day. So if you can't write an essay every day or every week, a good idea would be to just take topics from various coachings, previous years essays, etc. Choose a topic and brainstorm for 20-25 minutes, jot down your points, take your structure in place, and then leave it at that. If you don't have the time to write an essay, ideally I would suggest that you write one essay test per week. That is a full test, two full essays per week in that 3-month period. So that would be around 12 weeks and 24 essays, but it could be lesser also. Let's say 15 odd essays at least should be done. But if you can't, you should brainstorm every other day. I'll show you how I used to brainstorm. This is a one-pager brainstorming for a essay topic I took up. So I used to do it for the abstract topics because they are more harder to handle. So pick up many abstract topics and just brainstorm every day for 25 minutes. For example, commitment to ideals is and not idols is the need of the hour. So I just made a short brainstorming of it in 25 minutes. This is all what I would want to write in the essay. It gives you a sense of surety also that if any new topic is thrown at you, if you can brainstorm well, you can write the essay well, right? The crux of the essay is done in the brainstorming. The writing is just sketching it out. So you can do this exercise, then you can have more topics done and more angles tried onto how to brainstorm for an essay. Subheadings for body and conclusion is something I would recommend and I have done. An example would be keep a set of conclusion headers ready. For example, some words you can use in conclusion, right? The heading of the conclusion where the pre-conclusion starts. Let's say healing the population issue in the country, or healing the COVID situation, reviving NAM, that could be a heading. A, a window of opportunity, right? So that could be the start of your conclusion. Green shoots in the offing, that is one. So have these kind of subheadings which give a sense of what is contained within that subheading. That might be a good idea to try, and you will get a practice of this as you try to write more subheadings. Get it checked and keep a set ready. Keep a set of headings and subheadings ready so that you can immediately use them at your beck and call and write in the actual exam. Then keep seeing topics from other coaching. So even though you don't write everything which is there in the market, try to see as many essay topics as possible. What happens is you might come across an essay topic which is very new and seems very difficult to you. But then you take it, try to do brainstorming, you'll realize, oh, this was handleable, this was doable. So that gives you a sense of confidence and you have a wide sense of what kinds of trends are there. Read Yojana Kurukshetra not fully from essay perspective. Read the first article which they write, which is generally done by the main writer for that month. And it is talking about a very broad theme in a bird's eye view perspective, and they write it from a very GS kind of an angle. Do look at Yojana's first article. They'll give you a sense of what kind of a simple essay UPSC might expect, right? And it has all those things. It has quotes, it has boxes, it has all those other things. Diagrams, it just reminded me, don't use a lot of diagrams. Actually, don't use diagrams in an essay. An essay does not require diagrams or flowcharts. If you're compelled to use one, use only one at max, not more than that. I would suggest don't use any. Read some good essays which have been written over the years. I am attaching some links here which might be useful to you. And as I told before, you have 5 minutes to finish a page as compared to 2.5, 3 minutes in GS. Just try to be more legible while writing an essay. It will fetch you more marks. Being aesthetic, it does give a sense of flow in the essay also. These are some links which you could look at. And I hope I have addressed major queries during this whole presentation. I think it has been a bit long, but we can take some questions if the time allows, sir. Asit,
I
sir.
think the intention was to do it for, I think you'll have to stop the screen share.
Yes, sir. 1 second. Yes.
The intention was to do it for 1 hour. I think that's what we had discussed. You said you'll wind it up in 1 hour, and it went to almost 1.5 hours. But I think it has been exhaustive. I had written a lot of things that I wanted to ask, but most of the things you eventually tick, tick, tick. I went on ticking away most of the things. It was very well organized. I think that's one thing that I would add. It has been very insightful, detailed. Uh, I have certain things to add out here. I think what happens is that a lot of people are writing a collection of GS answers in essay rather than writing an essay.
Right, sir.
And there's a lot of emphasis on putting a lot of data and reports, and people end up not expressing their personality or their values or where they come from. Now, from your essays, what I picked up was that you reflect your background, your computer science background or your management background or the way you think, what personality you have or what values you have. And this is why I think essay is a common paper across all examinations globally, right? If you take any examination, I think that's why they keep it, because it reflects who the person is. I always tell people that if you write an essay on gender, it's quite possible we can understand what you feel in terms of gender rights, right?
Yeah.
So I think expressing your views and expressing your personality through a lot of personal examples, I think that works.
Right.
And
I think somebody, one of the toppers talks I saw earlier in this preparation time, one of the girls mentioned that, when you're writing an essay on patriarchy, women issues, you should, to an extent, obsessively write, with a lot of heat in the essay. The examiner should feel that you really feel for the topic.
persuasive.
Very persuasive, very emotional also at times, because these are topics that some people could relate to. I wrote the essay on patriarchy last time, and I actually had examples which might be very grim, but it hits the spot, right? So you have to think about persuading the writer, or sorry, the reader, to believe in what you're saying, and it might need to go off the GS track, and take a very wide approach to things.
Because I think if you have to cross 140, you have to be creative. You have to. I remember
Definitely.
pulling Vivek's leg because he had written about visiting the National Museum and what he saw there. But I think that works, because if you narrate a story or if you narrate an experience, it adds a personal touch to it, and that's something nobody else can replicate. Right? This will be completely unique to your paper.
Talked about experiences, sir. I'll tell you a very short story on this. This second essay on patriarchy last year, I gave an example of Indira Nui. When she became the CEO, she came back home to tell her
Keep the
mother.
crown outside.
Yeah, but the mother said that go first bring milk, because you're the woman of the house, to make tea, and then we'll talk about whatever you have achieved. This is a
I
story.
think what she said was that keep your crown outside and come inside. You're a
So what
wife
I'm
inside the house.
what happened, sir? This is what I heard Indira Nui saying in our convocation at IIM Calcutta. I remember that applied it here. So you have to think that way. Anything in your life experience can actually come to your use while writing an essay.
Right.
It is an expression of self at the end.
I think that's what works. Couple of things. Now, again, I'm not asking some things because you have already covered on this. Uh, I have this question that people keep coming and asking. Should I draw maps, diagrams, and essays? What is your take on this?
I completely did not do any of that, sir. I did it in practice essays earlier on, but the examiners are, I think, generally also orthodox in some ways. An essay doesn't need a diagram. It's a
But primary problem is that different things have worked for different people. If I bluntly say no, somebody's going to come back with Dira Singh's essay and say that, see, this is rank one. She has a map.
So what I said is in the presentation also, if you are very compelled, draw one diagram. That should be more than enough, not more than that, because then it eats up your space also. If you have something that represents something very beautifully in a diagram, then why not? But I like to be more orthodox in my approach. But one can do it, but try to keep it to a minimum.
What are the factors which you consider while choosing a topic? What comes to your mind? I'm going to write on this. Why? What compels you to write on the topic?
Number one is understanding of the topic. I should be very clear what the topic is asking. Number two would be content. And then third would be the quotes, essays, quotes, anecdotes, poetry, etc. I have on it. The first is that I should be very clear what the topic is, because I have done this mistake in the past where I chose a topic because I had a good introduction for it or a good anecdote for it. Middle of the essay, I realized, oh, I don't have enough content, or I don't understand the topic well, or while after I ended the essay and then checked the essay back, I realized that the misinterpretation led me to actually leave a part of the topic unaddressed, and that of course will then not get you marks. So you have to be very absolutely crystal clear about what the demand of the topic is.
I've had some people come and say that I did not pick up this particular topic because I thought everybody would write on that.
I think
Some
that
topics are extremely popular. Every year, I think there are one or two topics that 60-70% of people would write that topic.
So I think last year I wrote both the topics which were the most obvious choices.
Right.
The simplicity essay was, I think, something most people chose, and patriarchy was also something most people chose. Some people say that social issues, patriarchy, the sociology guys might write better. I chose something that I could do well. It is me representing myself, and if I have done well, I'll get good marks. It is not that somebody else has gotten good marks, so I'll not get it, or if more people are writing. So I think that should not be a criteria, unless you have two options where both the options are very well known to you, and then you choose the lesser chosen one, or potentially lesser chosen one by others. Then that could be a choice, but it is rare in such scenarios.
Now, you have a highly contentious topic like patriarchy. Do you try to balance your judgment also, or just write one side? Like, do you try to look at the other side of the argument?
I do, sir. So in patriarchy, we always talk about how men are oppressing women, and how various kinds of patriarchy are there. There is also the other kind where women are also a part of it, propagating is. There is a patriarchal effect on the.
Women are the custodians of patriarchy. I think there's something like that.
Yes, and also not just how women are affected by patriarchy, but also men. The kind of gender roles that are defined by patriarchy affects men also in a negative sense. So all of those things just add a new flavor to your topic. Oh, this person has addressed this also. Oh, he has thought about this also. So maybe that is the perspective I look at, that if I can give something fresh that other people might not be writing in that particular topic.
So there is this approach that many people follow, that you have an introduction and then you have a connector paragraph. I think you briefly talked about it.
Yes, sir.
So in the connector paragraph, you give a preview of what is going to come later.
Yes,
in
sir.
this essay, I am going to discuss about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What's your take? Does it make it more mechanical, or what do you think about it?
I think, sir, I think it works well in the abstract essay, because it gives a sense to the examiner that you have thought through of what you're going to write, and you have broken down an abstract topic into an objective one. So I think it might work well. I think I did this for both my essays last year. I gave an introduction to the body that I'll talk about this, then we'll come to this and conclude with a future looking kind of a hopeful kind of a thing. So that I wrote in both my essays. I think it's a good strategy to go with. Gives a sense of completion of the introduction and starting of the body very clearly.
Okay. Then I really like the idea of pre-conclusion, that a paragraph that summarizes what you were trying to say. I think that's a very interesting idea that can be taken up. Now, anybody wants? I think there were a couple of questions that was written. One was differentiate between persuasion and analytical. The analytical, this, hence, this is similar to. You are able to see the chat box, right?
Yes, yes.
There's a question by Srij.
Right. I can. So Srij, the question is, I think I might have confused you a bit while talking about it. Persuasion would be, adding examples, data, facts to make sure that you substantiate your argument. It is not a standalone argument. Like, if I have to say my name is Prateek Rao and I am born on this and this date, it is because my date of birth certificate says this, and my class 10 certificate says this. Thus, I'm born here in this and that, right? So that is persuading by data. The persuasion might include being analytical, right? So this, hence this, then this might be a part of the persuasion. They are not two different things, if I'm clear. Persuasion is a style. Analytical is what you actually do within that persuasion. So if you're persuading somebody to accept me with my name and my place of birth and my date of birth, the analysis of my date of birth certificate, my class 10 certificate, some police verification, etc., will be the analytical part of it, which will persuade the reader that yes, this person is right in what he or she is saying. I hope that answers the question.
I think that's fair enough. Should we write synopsis like we used to write in school board exam? What's your take?
Synopsis and rough work for our knowing that we are going to write. Yes. So I always write one statement in front of the topics or the themes I write in my brainstorming part, because I exactly know then what to write. So a shorter form of what you're going to write should be there in the brainstorming page. I personally used to do it because I might forget what I had brainstormed on. So write the crux of it there and then expand on it in your in the fair work, as you say. So the synapses could be in the rough work, the fair work could, then it's much easier to just see what you have to write, go back and write it, rather than remembering what you have thought about. That is why the brainstorming has to be very extensive and write as much as possible. That's why it takes some time, 20-25 minutes.
And I think it structures it because, like you said, one page out here, I move from this idea to this idea. So you don't jumble things up. I think that part is important. I think do essay need codes of philosophers? I think that has already been addressed. You have mentioned about the importance of codes.
You should have a set of quotes. Like I had a set of 50 to 100 quotes by topics, like population, poverty, hunger, health, etc.
Can essay be a dialogue format? I think that would be interesting. A lot of people have tried that, like two people talking.
The whole essay can't be a dialogue format.
The introduction could be.
Introduction surely can be.
Right. But I think I always tell this people that try before you do this in UPSC, because some people are good at writing and expressing.
Yes.
Some of us are not. That's the truth.
What happens is, sir, so I also started doing dialogue maybe a couple of years back. I realized I'm writing the dialogue conversation for 3 pages. That becomes
I remember reading one of your essays. I think I'm not exactly remembering the topic, but I remember reading one of your essays.
So that might happen. Practice it, of course.
Right. So I think you have to practice it. The story approach, the dialogue approach. These things have to be tried and tested before you go into the examination.
I think 90% of the structure should be in place before you enter the examination hall. The experimentation could be 10%, not in the framework, but in what you write and how you connect it. Maybe that is the space you have.
One thing people do wrong is that they write and practice objective essays and they don't practice abstract essays.
Right.
Quotations and the philosophical statements. So and what is happening is that even in part A, now earlier it was all objective. Now it is objective and abstract, and even in the objective part there are abstract topics. Yes. So I think I wouldn't be surprised if all 8 are abstract topics one of these years. Right?
It happens. I wouldn't be surprised if there is just one essay of 2,500 words.
2,500 words. Anything can happen.
So I actually, this is a good point you brought up. I did used to practice one 2,500 word essay also every year, just to be on the safe side to write a longish essay. Can we do rough work in the answer sheets? Yes, there are 4 to 5 or 6 rough sheets at the end of the paper where you can do it.
And one idea that's usually suggested is give a heading rough work and cross it out after you do it. So
yes, cross out the rough work. Cross out the rough work after you're done with it.
So in GS this year, we are it's about time that the marking pattern changes, because when it moved from 10 to 5 and 12.5 and 10 to 15, I think this is a year ripe to see a change in marking.
One must be very different, because 2017, the first mains I wrote was the mains, the pattern. And many people did not realize that there were 2 sets of marks.
Right.
So they started from 1 to 20.
I remember that. Right.
Realized after GS1 that this has happened.
This has happened, right? So I think keep your eyes and ears open. I think we'll sum it up. Where do you find essay topics to practice? I think the primary source for essay topics should be previous year UPSC questions.
Yes, that is the first source. Right? And then the mock test series which come in the market before mains.
Mock test series, and again, I think the choice of test series, like Prateek has mentioned, is very important. You need to know who's doing it, what's the team behind it, the timeline of delivery. So, and I, along with the test series, I always add this, that get your essays read by people who have no link to UPSC.
Yes, like, yes. So I think that is one of the that before joining any test series for practicing, how can we get evaluated? Give it to your parents, brothers, spouses, partners.
Reach out to your college professors, your teachers in school. They would be happy to read, right? I think that brings in a new insight because being UPSC, what do you call? I'll say the coaching industry or whatever it is. We have a certain bias that sets in. We look for this and this and this. So getting a different set of eyes to look at your essays would be a very interesting idea to explore.
Of course, sir.
So is there answer sheet, Rafik? So I'm going to share Prateek's blog out here. We'll include it in the.
You can share the link, the PPT also, if that is possible.
Right. We'll provide. Is a PPT there in your this thing blog?
I'll put it up.
Put it up in the blog. I think you've put in some effort. You put it up in the blog. So don't just look at his essays. There are nice photos, nice write-ups. There are a lot of things that you can find interesting in his blog.
There was a question on prelims, sir, but I don't think we have the time to do it.
Right. I have another session at 1 hour, so I have to leave as well.
If I can give just one statement to that question, because that is there.
Right.
If you have the time, 90-day strategy, 45 mock tests, one test every other day, the other day evaluating the test, and looking at previous years' papers, 8 to 10 years, finding out the trends and what kind of answers UPSC gives to a particular question from the answer key. That is the basic you should look at. The rest you'll figure out on your own, I think.
I think prelims is a different challenge for different people. I have this theory that some people always clear prelims and some people find it difficult to clear prelims. Some people study for 15 days and cross 120 and 130, right?
So that's cumulative knowledge also over the years. So I realized that I can now do it in 1 month, which took 3 months earlier, because you know exactly what to do.
And understanding the pattern of the examination, type of questions, these things.
That is why I said that self-evaluation of 8 to 10 years, don't rely on coaching giving you previous year's questions. Do your own analysis, write down from where question is asked, etc., and what kind of questions. You will have a hunch of what to study most and what to study lesser.
So I think that should sum up. I'll briefly mention we have a main test series and we have a 3 essay plan. It's an essay plan. It's not an essay program. So 3 essays that you write would be evaluated. You can get the details of the program from our this thing. Mentorship support is provided. Solution is provided. And that's it. You can take a look at that. Then consider that as one of your options when you're researching. That is it. Thank you so much. I think there are how important fancy English words, vocabulary, plain essay.
Not at all. Use simple word. If the word is not readable also at times because you're writing at a speed, so you might write a big word which might not be legible or readable. That might create an issue.
I use this saying that UPSC is not elitist in nature. I've seen people with very simple English, very simple expressions clear the exam with very good ranks.
I have written flowery essays and gotten less marks, so I can tell you that don't do it.
It's important to write simple essays.
Yes. Very simply. That's why look at the first articles of Yojana. It will give you a good sense of how to write very simply.
Okay, thank you everyone for participating, and big thanks to Prateek for the session.
An honor. Thank you so much.
Right, it has been very useful.
And anybody who wants to reach out, I think sir has shared the blog link.
There, I think you have contact me out there on your blog.
It's there.
Right, so you can reach out. Okay. November would be a good time to reach out maximum. December, I think things would change. Right. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.